The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday, and with it my blood began to boil. Violation notice, unapproved social gathering. It read in bold letters, signed by none other than Brenda Thompson, HOA Board President. Have you ever dealt with an unfair HOA or difficult neighbor? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear it. My son Michael had just graduated high school after years of struggling with dyslexia. We'd planned a backyard celebration for about 30 people, family, and close friends who'd supported him through his journey. Nothing extravagant, just a barbecue, some decorations, and a cake. We'd even sent out informal invitations 2 weeks prior. I called Michael downstairs, his face still beaming with pride from his graduation ceremony 2 days before. "Mike, we need to talk," I said, handing him the letter. He read it slowly, his smile fading. "But Dad, they can't do this, can they? It's my graduation party." I put my arm around his shoulder. "Don't worry, son. We'll figure this out." The next morning I marched over to Brenda's house at the end of the cul-de-sac. Her lawn was immaculate, as always, with not a single blade out of place. She answered the door with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "David, what a pleasant surprise," she said, though we both knew it wasn't. "Brenda, about this violation notice," I began, trying to keep my voice level. "I don't understand why our party is an issue." She ushered me into her pristine living room, everything in its place. "It's nothing personal, David. You know the rules. Any gathering over 10 people requires board approval 30 days in advance. But that's for community events, not private family celebrations," I countered. "The Johnsons had a retirement party last month with at least 20 people, no approval needed." Brenda's smile tightened. That was different. They're long-standing residents with a history of community service. I felt my temper rising. "We've lived here for 8 years, Brenda. I've served on the landscape committee. Michael volunteered to help with the community garden last summer." She stood up, signaling the conversation was over. "Rules are rules, David. You can reschedule for next month and submit the proper paperwork. Or you can have a smaller gathering that complies with current regulations. What would you have done in my place? Fight back or walk away?" As a retired Army sergeant, I wasn't accustomed to backing down from a fight, especially when my family was involved. "I'll see you at the next board meeting," I said firmly before leaving. That evening, my wife Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table, poring over the HOA bylaws. They were thick, complicated, and deliberately vague in places. "This is ridiculous," Sarah said, pushing the documents away. "She's just targeting us because Michael beat her son in that student council election." I nodded. Michael had narrowly defeated Brenda's son Kevin for student council president, and Brenda had been cold to us ever since. "We need proof," I said. "If she's going to hide behind these rules, maybe we should see how well she follows them herself." Over the next 2 weeks, while we fought with the board about the party, I started paying closer attention to Brenda's house and activities. What I discovered would become our ammunition. At the board meeting, I presented our case calmly and professionally. I showed them the invitations, the guest list, our plans for parking, and even a noise abatement strategy. I pointed out the numerous other similar gatherings that had occurred without approval. Brenda listened patiently, then addressed the board. "While I appreciate David's presentation, rules exist for a reason. If we make exceptions for one resident, where does it end?" "The bylaws are clear on this matter." To my surprise, several board members seemed sympathetic. After some discussion, they made what seemed like a reasonable offer. "David," said Robert the treasurer, "how about a compromise? You can have your party this weekend, but you'll need to limit it to 20 people and end by 9 p.m. And you'll need to submit the proper paperwork for future events." I looked at Sarah, who nodded slightly. It wasn't everything we wanted, but it was something. Michael would still get his celebration. "Thank you," I said. "We accept those terms." Brenda's smile was tight as she added, "And David, please make sure your guests don't park on the street. We've had issues with that before." "We'll make sure all cars are in our driveway or the garage," I assured her. We left feeling hopeful, thinking we'd found a solution. Michael was disappointed about the reduced guest list, but understood. We called everyone, explained the situation, and finalized our plans for Saturday. I had no idea the next letter in my mailbox would change everything. On Friday, the day before the party, another certified letter arrived. This one was even worse than the first. It cited multiple pre-existing violations that needed to be rectified immediately, before any gathering could take place. Our fence was apparently half an inch too high. A decorative garden statue was in violation of the community's uniform aesthetic policy. Even the color of our front door, which had been the same for 8 years, was suddenly problematic. When I called Brenda, she was unsympathetic. "I'm sorry, David, but these issues were brought to my attention. We can't allow a gathering when there are outstanding violations." "This is harassment, Brenda," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You're deliberately targeting us. I suggest you focus on bringing your property into compliance rather than making accusations," she replied coldly before hanging up. That night, as I sat in the backyard looking at the decorations we'd already hung, I made a decision. If Brenda wanted to play by the rules, then we'd play by them too. Over the next week, I documented everything. I took photographs, measured distances, and kept detailed notes. I wasn't just focusing on my own property anymore. I was watching Brenda's house too. What I found was gold. Brenda, the enforcer of rules, was breaking them left and right. Her fence was not only too tall, but also the wrong color according to bylaws. She'd installed a fountain in her front yard without approval. Her monthly bridge club gatherings regularly exceeded the 10-person limit without proper paperwork. She'd even painted her front door without submitting the color for approval. But the biggest violation was something I discovered by accident. Talking to our neighbor Jim, who'd lived in Willow Creek Estates since it was founded, I learned that Brenda had converted her garage into a craft room years ago, without approval and in direct violation of community covenants. Armed with this information, I requested a special meeting with the HOA board. I didn't mention why, just that I had important community business to discuss. The meeting was set for the following Tuesday. In the meantime, we postponed Michael's party, explaining to him that sometimes adults have to deal with unfair situations. He was disappointed but understanding. "I'm proud of you either way, Dad," he said, giving me a hug, "for fighting for what's right." At the meeting, Brenda sat at the head of the table, her usual position of authority. She smiled politely as I began my presentation. "Thank you for meeting with me," I began. "I'm here today not just to discuss my situation, but to address a larger issue of fairness and consistency in our community." I proceeded to lay out my case, starting with the harassment my family had experienced. I showed them the letters, the timeline, and the constantly changing requirements. Then I pivoted, But this isn't just about my family, I continued. It's about how rules are applied across our community, specifically how they're not being applied equally to everyone, including some board members. I could see Brenda shift uncomfortably in her seat as I presented photograph after photograph of her property violations. I showed them the bylaws she was breaking, the same ones she'd used against us. "Rules are rules, Brenda," I said, echoing her words back to her, "whether you like them or not." The room was silent as the board members reviewed the evidence. Robert, the treasurer, looked particularly troubled. "Brenda," he said finally, "these are serious violations. The garage conversion alone could result in substantial fines." Brenda's face had gone pale. "This is ridiculous. David is clearly holding a grudge because I wouldn't bend the rules for his party." "This isn't about the party anymore, Brenda," I said calmly. "It's about fairness. It's about using your position to target families you don't like while ignoring your own violations." The board deliberated for nearly an hour. In the end, they gave Brenda two options: step down from her position as board president and bring her property into compliance within 30 days, or face fines and potential legal action for her violations. To everyone's surprise, Brenda chose to step down. "I don't need this stress," she announced haughtily. "This community doesn't appreciate everything I do for it." With Brenda gone, the board quickly approved our party, with no restrictions other than the standard noise ordinances. We rescheduled for the following weekend, and this time nothing stood in our way. The party was everything Michael deserved. Friends and family filled our backyard, celebrating not just his graduation, but his perseverance through years of academic challenges. Even some neighbors who'd heard about our situation stopped by to offer support. Brenda, of course, was conspicuously absent, though I did see her peeking through her curtains as guests arrived. A small part of me felt sorry for her. She was clearly a bitter, unhappy person, but I couldn't forgive how she'd tried to steal this moment from my son. In the weeks that followed, things changed in Willow Creek Estates. The new board president, Robert, implemented a more balanced approach to rule enforcement. They formed a committee to review and clarify the bylaws, making them less open to interpretation. Most importantly, they established a formal appeal process for residents who felt they were being treated unfairly. Michael left for college in the fall, proud and ready for the next chapter of his life. Before he left, he hugged me and said, "Thanks for teaching me to stand up for myself, Dad." I smiled. "That's what fathers do, son." In the end, they buried themselves in their own arrogance. What's the sweetest justice you've ever seen? Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't about retaliation. It's about exposing hypocrisy and creating positive change that benefits everyone. That's a lesson I hope Michael carries with him long after his graduation party is just a memory.